Here we are, bottom of the Smash Mountain. Today I'm so excited to be joined by the lovely Vigilante Blade. Thank you so much for joining me. You are somebody who used to be a part of the original OG crew that was the development team of Project M and more, of course, that you've contributed to the PM community, the Smash community at large. So Vigilante, thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor to be here.
It is an honor to have you. So we have been more or less aware of each other for a little while now. I think I found you sometime during last November when
Mm.
the Big House Online got cease and desisted by Nintendo. I saw you tweeting stuff and I was like, ooh, okay, follow. And then I have pretty much like, you just keep spitting out facts every time I see you tweet. So I go, okay, and then and then like. So you may or may not have observed this. We can start with just a semi-present question as compared to starting from the beginning. But do you remember first becoming aware of me, or is it just more of like when we first started like talking?
I think I remember you followed me at some point. You just started talking like just answering some of my posts. Sometimes I was like, okay, well, I see this guy is just around, and then I started noticing like, oh yeah, he's got a podcast. So I just went and checked it out, and I saw you covered a lot of because I know you're mostly focused on melee, but I saw you were like covering a lot of Project M slash P plus stuff as well, and I figured it's probably because you understood where we were coming from, and you want to give us a chance to essentially, give our thoughts out there because, a lot of things happen with the P plus community as well. And I really, I was really happy to hear that, there's people in the melee scene who were open to hearing us out and giving us a platform. So I figured, you know what, that this is a guy worth following, and I decided that, I wanted to like, try to give you a shout out once in a while because I thought it was appreciated, essentially.
And the reason why I have come to appreciate from what I know of the P plus community as a whole in more recent times, starting with last November, was that solidarity, the immediate understanding of, well, it's funny, because this has actually been a problem for us for over 5 years now. Reading the anonymous Smasher tweet, hearing all the people that sort of came in and said, yep, I've heard things like that, or I can
Yeah.
back up this side of that story or this part, that segment of the story. And I go, well, how have I not known about this? And the answer is really because I wasn't super
Mhm.
involved with Smash as a whole back in
Mm.
2015 when PM was at its peak, when it was just about to get quietly thrown under the bus.
Hmm.
And now in the present time, there's no time like the present to try to use what little platform I have to lift up people who have experienced this for longer than Melee has. Even if there's the 2013 Evo story, it's just that we never quite got the same level of treatment in terms of poor treatment from Nintendo. Melee hasn't even experienced having to do shadow events and all that kind of stuff, and that's what P Plus has been having to do for years, even if you haven't been calling it shadow events. But
Yeah.
for you, it's it's just something that I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to have you on, especially because I always do love talking to people who interact with Smash in a way that might not be the most glamorous, or everybody's like chasing after you for internet clout points, bloat, or whatever. I love talking to people who interact with Melee just as much as a top player or a top figurehead or a top whatever contributor would. You've done plenty of things around Smash, and I love platforming people like that.
Really appreciate it. And I have to say, like, I think the reason why a lot of the PM community came out to support Melee is because we're kind of an offshoot of the Melee community in some way. Because I remember when we first started working on PM, one of the first things we wanted to do. I mean, I wasn't there at the beginning, but it was pretty close to the beginning, like after the first demo, essentially. And a lot of people were like, well, we want to give Melee players something fun to play because a lot of people didn't like Brawl, and I mean, if you like it, that's fine. I'm not gonna judge you on that. It's a game that some people enjoy. And they have a good reason to. But for a lot of us, we didn't enjoy the game, so we figured, hey, let's give back to this community that we've been part of for so long. And obviously, there's been some creative liberties and differences between PM and Melee, but it came from that sentiment of just wanting to give back. And so we've always cared about the Melee community in some way because that's where a lot of us came from. So that's part of why we were really like pushing to try and help because they're pretty much our friends in some ways.
And so, like you said, your original involvement was not necessarily right at the super, super beginning of PM
Mhm.
starting to come out, but what is the timeline for your origin story within Smash? When did you first start to play the game or get involved?
So I mean, I think like a lot of people my age, because I'm about 34, I started with Smash 64, and I like the game, but never played competitively at all. So eventually, I got Melee, of course, because Melee was just everything I wanted to be and more, and and then I started like going through, like these little mom and pop store tournaments, and then eventually I had like this high school tournament scene, which is like, oh, you have 1 hour to try and do competitive sets, and it was not the best organized thing, but at that time I thought I was the best player in the world. Like I just wouldn't lose. And then I met PKM Vodka, who is a really really good Canadian player in who actually lived in Quebec when I first met him, and like he kicked my ass. He just destroyed me. And but then I learned, hey, there's so much more to learn about Melee, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I thought I've seen everything. So I went to tournaments, realized that I was less of a Goku and more of a Yamcha in terms of skill levels, but that's fine. And and eventually, I've learned to appreciate losing. I know it's weird to say. It's weird to say, but every time I've lost, I realize, oh, well, this can be done better. This is just okay. So I'm learning more. I'm appreciating the intricacies of the game, and I never got to a high level, but I was always around. I was like playing a bit, and like I made some friends because for some reason people liked the fact I was playing weird with my controller, uh, because essentially like I'm basically known for playing this way essentially.
Wait, hold on. You
So
hold the whole GameCube controller backwards.
yeah, so like if I want to wave dash, I do this.
What?
So so it's basically why I've been known. It's like the only reason people know who I am in like my local scene. I was never that good, but eventually, um, Brawl came out, wasn't quite my thing, so I just kind of stopped playing really. Like I just lost motivation. But eventually, like I saw a video from PM, and I was like, oh wait, this is Falco wave dashing. That's kind of interesting. So
Oh
I started
yeah.
looking more into it. And then I joined the IRC and I just started like spitballing ideas and talking to people in the chat. And then they're like, hey, you have some good ideas, even though like you're not the most skilled player. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can try and bring the game to a bunch of Montreal tournaments. Maybe people enjoy that. And so I kind of joined as a playtester. And then eventually I started like working a bit on like oh, I'll do a bit of programming here and there. I'm not that good, but I'll help out here and there. Eventually, like I started working a bit on early Lucario after Shanus kind of made like the skeleton of the character. Um, Eventually, Vanguard took over though, and then I went to work on Roy, which I was under Shattuck, and worked pretty closely with Sethlon to try and balance the character better. So really, Roy is like a character I really love, and he was one of my mains in Melee. So that's why I was really involved with him. And eventually, I started working on Isaac with Shattuck as well. Of course, never got completed, but he was a character I really wanted to get out there. And then I did a lot of interviews, a lot of PR. In fact, a lot of things I know about the scene actually comes from people from various websites like IGN, Kotaku, and stuff like that, which is interesting in some ways because they gave me some ideas, and also I spoken to a lot of people because Nintendo hires journalists, a lot of journalists to do their PR work as well as to do a lot of their um, you know, treehouse stuff, essentially. So it's kind of the reason why I've heard some stuff in the background, and that's how I got to confirm things with some TOs eventually. So that's kind of why I came out there and said what I had to say, because eventually, when I came out and talked about how, basically everything Anonymous Smasher said was true, in my opinion, from my experience. And I kind of realized, hey, you know what? This needs to be out there. I can't keep this to myself anymore.
there was just so many bombshells, and just in one twit longer, and even besides that, just people
Hmm.
afterwards, like people with like actual Twitter profiles and known members of the community saying, okay, this specific segment, yep, that sounds about right, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And for me, who I'm trying to get more involved. No, I wasn't doing a podcast or anything last fall at the time, but I
Hmm.
was I was definitely getting heavy into Smash Twitter for sure. And I'm just seeing all of this, and I'm just being blown away by the fact that
Hmm.
it wasn't just a matter of what like the community itself sort of disappearing, because from my casual long distance perspective back in 2015 I knew what PM was, but I was
Hmm.
like, well, I guess they stopped developing it, and now it guess nothing's happening. But in truth, there was lots of things happening, and the biggest event for PM to today's date of October 2021, actually it was an event that was held in 2018 if I'm not mistaken. So
Hmm.
there were plenty of things happening, and it was with the revival of P Plus when the first demo dropped and there was that trailer, it got lots of views. I was seeing that, I was
Yeah.
going like, oh yeah, cool, cool, that's
Hmm.
cool. So wait, what? So like I was totally uneducated, but trying to become more educated once
Hmm.
the cease and desist stuff started to first go down within Melee. So
Hmm.
it's been really great to find solidarity, of course, but also there's people who kind of like say, yeah, uh, this is kind of how it works, and you
Yeah.
know, this is corporate greed at one of its most shining examples, and this is the world, kid. And I'm just going, oh man, this is rough. I picked the
Hmm.
wrong franchise to fall in love with, or just, you know, like you had to go through those things, or I went through those things where it was like kind
Hmm.
of like a realization of, oh, this is all real, because I did not go through Evo 2013. I didn't go
Hmm.
through MLG dropping Melee because Nintendo
Hmm.
told them to drop Melee. Like I didn't go through any of that, so it was just like
Hmm.
that felt like ancient history to me. Surely they wouldn't do anything crazy like that now, and yet here we are, and within 12 months they've done so many things that have just been like, oh, miss after miss. Really just awful
Yeah.
things towards PM, or sorry, the P Plus community, towards Melee sort of indirectly, but mostly towards
Hmm.
P Plus, and it's been bad to witness, but also
Hmm.
banding together and sharing resources, having
Hmm.
coincidentally awesome tournaments happening in the same location the same weekend. Wow.
Hmm.
Totally happenstance, you know? Really cool to see.
Hmm.
Wink.
I gotta give props to people like Studebaker or Wombat. Like these guys are insane in the sense of like they have such amazing organizational skills despite everything they have to go through. It's just insane. Uh, we don't deserve them. We absolutely don't deserve these people. And honestly, I'm I'm happy that this community is so willing to take a stand and actually like they're like, hey, we like this game, we want to play it, we're gonna do whatever it takes to play it, no matter what. Nintendo's not gonna stop us, and I think it's very inspiring in my opinion. And I don't know why. I think Nintendo's become more aggressive lately. Um, I know they've always been the kind of company who would go after mods, go after like tournaments and stuff like that. But back then, I felt they were really like trying to do this in a kind of a hidden way. They would be like, okay, let's go and ask Twitch to do this for us so we don't look bad. Let's go ask the TOs to basically throw away PM with the empty promises. But they would never do it directly. And I have to wonder if it's partially because PM was such a popular game that they thought that the risk assessment was too high if they went directly after PM, and the backlash would have been too big. And that's what I'm wondering. But of course, I'm just spitballing here.
Well, you're right, because they learned their lesson for Evo 2013.
Yeah.
That was a direct of them saying, "Hey, Evo, you can't do this. You can't stream the
Mhm.
event." And of course, this was off the back of a big charity drive where the community raised over
Yeah.
$90,000 to get Melee into Evo. So that was definitely a factor as well,
Mhm.
to the point where everybody nowadays is suggesting every tournament needs to be a charity event. And uh, on
Mhm.
the one hand, that's not a bad idea. On the other hand, it's also hard to execute. But the point is that that was such a bad moment for them. It was almost as if
Yeah.
they're kind of like that Omni Droid from The Incredibles, where that just slowly learns different things to attack the opponent. You can't use the same
Mhm.
move again. So then they thought,
Mhm.
let's shadow attack PM because you're right.
Mhm.
According to all of these things that I've watched and people's testimonies, however you want to phrase
Mhm.
it, the story is that Melee and Brawl and PM were all just sort of there at every tournament you would go to.
Yeah.
And more often than not, especially in 2014, as PM's popularity grew, that had the most entrants. That had the best viewership.
Mhm.
There were people like Armada and Mewtwo King playing and placing top eight. PM dedicated players, Brawl players coming over, a perfect crossover and uniting all three communities because they can have something in common literally in Project M. So having to think about the idea of going after a competitive scene and also like it wasn't just competitive people playing PM. I mean, it was like really popular just for people who liked the idea of it was kind of the DLC that Brawl never had. Brawl never had
Yeah.
DLC, otherwise Meta Knight would have, well, you know. So
Would have been patched.
yes. So that totally makes sense to me, like what you're saying. I like that theory where it's like we can't go after PM publicly because of what happened last time. So it's almost as if they learned their lesson with Evo and then yeah, like you said. And like a lot of people have said it's just let's get Twitch, Red Bull,
Mhm.
TOs, all these other people,
Yeah.
we'll have them do the dirty work.
I actually remember when I used to travel kind of around my province to talk to, to kind of bring the game around a bunch of places. I actually went to a lot of universities and colleges, and it was just people playing PM free for all with items on, using turbo mode, and just having a grand old time. And I was like, you know what, guys, want to play this way? It's cool. Because I remember, I think it was in the last 2 years of PM development, we've actually decided at some point we're like, we have a very huge subset of, I guess casual smashers is not the right term. I call them party smashers because I think casual is maybe a bit disrespectful for them. And we realized we're like, you know what? Let's do these weird things. Let's put turbo mode. We really wanted to put at some point we were talking about putting an N64 mode in the game, which could have been really interesting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're trying to like add some stuff that wasn't competitively oriented, but we were thinking, hey, you know what? People will play it, they'll have fun, and who cares how you play, you know? Because that's the thing. Melee, according to what a lot of people are saying, is not being played as the developer intended, even though I think that's not a great argument. But, if we're not playing as developers intend, who are we to tell people to play the way we want them to play? It's like how, I used to be very against auto L canceling. They're like, I was like, no, 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 I'm not okay with that. But now I've actually softened that stance because I'm thinking, you know what? It's the players who will decide. We made the game, but they're the ones playing it. It's their game. We're not going to force them. So the option's there. They want to use it. It's cool.
And when you were originally starting to get involved with the development team, it was just more of, I want to basically just help any way I can. Would you say that was your mindset?
Yeah, I started off as a fan of PM, obviously. Like I was like, oh my God, these guys are amazing. I mean, I I would look at someone like Dentarion, DS22, like these guys were just very skilled. Magus, extremely skilled. And when I would look at them, everything they did make a lot of sense to me. Like, and there was like this idea of like, what if I can have this experience of making a Smash game? Because this is not an experience everyone can just have easily.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was like, I've always wanted to experience what it's like to make a game. So I came in and I was like, okay, well, I like these people, I like this community. I just want to help, whether it's adding 2 lines of code to Lucario or like going to talk to IGN and getting them to show the game off. I would just do whatever people asked me to do, and I was trying to help around as much as I could. I gave some ideas. Some of them got rejected, some got put in the game, and just collaborative effort, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I was just trying to do my best, as I think everyone else was doing, and um, some were some were extremely skilled, some were extremely devoted. Like some gave basically the equivalent of full-time job to this project, which is pretty insane. Like I was just giving like a few hours a week, These people were giving like 35 hours like every week, and I was like, this is uh, I don't know. I just felt like I had to do something. I just want to help.
It's when it's a good team, it's when it's a great game, because even though they tried to make Brawl into a game that was not as friendly towards a competitive audience, it's
Hmm.
still Smash. And so if you put it to a development team that's not Nintendo, they can take some of those things, tweak the mechanics. I mean, I remember somebody was tweaking around with Ultimate stuff before they either got like cease and desisted or had to go underground.
Hmm.
But
I'll talk about Nyx the Shield, right?
yes, yes,
Okay, okay, got it.
yes. So shout outs to Nyx the Shield, who I saw clips of, like ledge cancel aerials and stuff like that for Ultimate, and I'm like, yes, yes. Something that I
Hmm.
think is so underrated is when you're running and you jump and you keep your momentum from running. That makes sense. What do you do in real life, Vigilante, when you're running and you jump? Do you just all of a sudden jump straight up and hardly move? Your aerial drift not as good as when you were running? Of course not. You get it.
Like how I explained wave dashing. I'm like, I mean, if you're gonna land diagonally, you're gonna slide. You know, there's traction.
I would love to
That-
IRL wave dash. That'd be so great.
I've tried it. It didn't work. But still,
Okay, it's because you're involved with such a great group of people that you're just saying, I'm willing to give time, not infinite time. I'm willing to give time to make this sort of thing go and fly. So you said that you did just a little bit at first, and then you started to get more involved with like actual programming, actual behind the scenes stuff, not just being the person who can do great play testing and offering great suggestions. And so with Roy, I remember watching Junebug do a video on Roy recently and
great video.
having great compliments towards the how the character of Roy was more or less implemented well into PM. So I suppose that is an indirect thank you to you as well. But for your part, if you really like the character so much and Roy is indeed your boy, would you say that that was your favorite part of working on PM originally, or was something else? Was it something else that was a favorite of yours?
Uh, I'd say Lucario, Roy, and trying to get Isaac off the ground, even though it never fully materialized. It was actually very nice to dream about making this character come to light. For Roy, what I really liked about his development is that I had played a lot of Roy in Melee because I realized that Falco is just I love Falco as a character. I just cannot play him. I'm not good with Falco. So when I and the thing is, I realized even though Royce is terrible in melee, I actually could get better results with Roy than I did with Falco. So sometimes a character just clicks, right? Just the character you like.
Like it's if it goes well with you, then like you just play more confident, and that's really a big part
Yeah,
of it, especially when you don't have to have super great tech skill at a certain level. You're not fighting against Mango or Armada.
exactly. And with Roy, we were really like focused on the idea of okay, Roy has to keep his identity. We can't change Roy in a way that feels like he's basically Marth with slightly different attributes. So we figured, okay, well, Roy is a fast follower. He has to remain a fast follower. He has to have a launcher with his down tilt. He has to have more of a rush down kind of approach to than Mark's, but also he needs to keep his weaknesses. He can't just be a character with just sweet spots. He needs to have the sour spot, but it doesn't have to be as bad. So
Yes, yes.
yeah, so essentially, when I first started working on Roy, I actually tried with my mediocre coding skills. I tried to be like, okay, well, let's take this character and kind of like change his tippers a little bit here and there, like give it a bit more knockback, get a slightly bit more damage, but not as good as Marth, like not at all. And maybe try and do some stuff. And like I figured, yeah, okay, no, this character is just better immediately because all of his moves are just safe. Uh, or safer rather compared
Okay.
to Melee Roy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, when Shattuck came in pretty quickly, and he's like, "All right, he was much more experienced than I was, and so he took the lead essentially. Um, So I kept working with him and also working with Sethlon as well to make sure the balance was proper. I'm the reason why Roy got nerfed because he used to have Meta Knights down air, which was absolutely terrible. But to be fair, that was just a test. We had a lot of horrible builds in PN because, of course, usually what happens is that we try to make a character better, but of course, by doing that, sometimes we overcorrect. And then we
Yes.
test, and we're like, "Oh, that's terrible. Okay, let's bring it back." And now he sucks. And then we'll try and correct over and over until we reach kind of like a bit of a balance.
You learn as
Uh,
you go.
yeah, I mean, it's just just making mistakes and learning from it. So yeah, Roy is honestly like my the favorite, the best thing I think I've been involved in PM so far that at least got released. I would say.
Right, because you were talking about how Isaac was going to be like the next big thing for you for what you were involved with specifically. And was that around the time that December came around in 2015 when the announcement drops that PM is being dropped in terms of development?
I mean, we've been working on Isaac for several months, but the issue here is that when the clone engine got created, it was very limited. Right now, like the Smash scene, I mean the Brawl scene especially, they're very lucky to have what they have. They have a much easier time adding characters. I mean, it's very difficult, but the tools are much better. And back then, adding Isaac was kind of a pipe dream in the sense that he would have had like disjointed grab. He would have had a different shield system, a different kind of like mid range. Yeah, I guess he would have been more of a mid range fighter. So he would combo at mid range.
Ooh.
So essentially, like he would not want any character to be in his face because he couldn't shield grab them at all, and he wouldn't have a lot of options to get out of pressure. So for him, it's like don't get in my bubble, don't get close to me. He's like COVID-19.
Well, that
He's
sounds like
no,
Min Min as well from Ultimate.
yeah, except yeah, I guess Min Min could have been a similar thing. Yeah. Um, except for us, I believe he would have been absolutely like terrible at close range. He would not have been good at all. So because it's crazy how not having a shield grab is a huge weakness in melee and in brawl PM any Smash game really.
Except for
So
Ultimate.
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Sorry,
Uh,
I love trying to grab an Ultimate and realizing this is just not a good idea.
mm, yeah, that's true. I have to admit I don't have much experience with Ultimate. I played it a bit, but I
No
can't say
worries. No worries.
yeah. But yeah, it would have been super fun. We had a lot of ideas, but the thing is, even if I tell you what we'd have had planned, the fact is he would have changed so much from what we first initially thought, because obviously a character changes development. Sometimes you realize, oh, okay, this move it won't work, so let's just scrap it completely. But yeah, he would have been very difficult to make, and I don't know if he would have even been made, even if we had the time. Um, but I mean, we had a character like Knuckles who was super close to being made. Lynn, I think, would have had a chance given more time for sure. Sammy, I mean, she was basically would have been cloned off Snake, so it would have been pretty doable. But Isaac was probably the one who was the least likely to happen, but we really wanted to try to make it work.
So I'm just curious from your own perspective because this you were involved with more behind the scenes, so you don't have to go into 100% detail, but just of like what it was like at the time of having to more or less drop it and disband as a group.
Um, it was a weird. It was kind of weird because I remembered when I think like 2 weeks before we disbanded, they just started like telling people, oh, you've been a bit less active, so yeah, we're just disbanding. I was like, I'm not disbanding, but like, oh, you're just off the team, okay? It's nothing personal, but like, um, yeah, we're kind of cleaning up. We're just keeping the most active members. And I was like, okay, that's kind of strange. And then I realized later, hey, okay, what's going on? 2 weeks later, why did it shut down? And um, they never actually told me why they did this. like the higher ups, but some people who were like part of the team and who were still there by the end, they told me like, yeah, we're just, you know, we got contacted by Nintendo. We just didn't want any fuss, so we basically had to shut down. I mean, we didn't get contacted by Nintendo, but we got contacted by people who gave them like a tip, like, "Hey, Nintendo is moving. Nintendo's going to do something." Um, so essentially, so it's not direct contact, but basically somebody was like, "Hey, this is happening. You should probably be careful here." We'd also consulted a lawyer, and the lawyer was like, "Hey, no, 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 no. You need to shut down. You can't go to court. You cannot fight Nintendo. This is not tenable." Um, so yeah, essentially, I was off the team like 2 weeks before the shutdown, and then I just realized, what? Oh, okay. I guess it's gone. Like, what happened? And so after asking people, they're like, "Yeah, it was just trying to protect you guys. Like, we didn't want you guys to be involved at the end, just in case." So essentially, that's what it was like.
That is, I mean, for you, it would have been just like a really confusing 2, 3, 4 weeks there when you were first
That
like
was
told,
strange.
because like you had intent, and it's not like you would
Mhm.
disappear for months at a time. Like to me, active means that you're
To be
there.
fair, actually, I've been inactive for over a month, I would say,
Oh,
because I had a death in the family. I didn't tell anyone. So I was completely inactive for the last month. Um,
oh, so that did sort
so
of make sense to you, but it was still like, wait, what? Kind
yeah,
of a
it made
feeling, I'm sure,
sense, but it was strange.
like out of the
Rather, I was like,
blue.
oh, yeah, because I was like, I mean, I did tell them I was gone for some reason, although I didn't tell them the exact reason because I kind of kept it to myself. Um, but still, I mean, the fact it shut down was strange. And it took at least 2, 3 months for me to actually get an answer out of someone of why this happened. And basically they told me like, yeah, we had to shut down. We didn't want any fuss. We wanted to make sure like nobody was gonna be in trouble. We just want to protect you guys. That's why it happened. It's like, okay, that's fine. So yeah, basically that's what happened.
And so after that all happens, now it's 2016. Like, what are you doing? I'm sure that you've done most of the growing up stuff. You're living a quote unquote adult life, whatever stage that may be. The 20s are weird, but I'm curious
Yeah.
about how you continue to try to be involved in some way, or if you decided, you know what, I'm just going to either move to another community, I'm just going to take a step back in general. Like, what did you do after the end of 2015?
I believe I took a bit of a break from the community. Like I just wanted to focus on myself because, I still had like a lot of things to handle. I went through a pretty tough time and eventually, I got better over time. And so I decided to kind of go back on like social media and check with my people, like my community. And I was never like very active. Like I was just around like kind of like as a cheerleader. Like it's like I wasn't playing competitively anymore, especially because my schedule didn't allow for it because most tournaments are on weekends and I would work weekends back in the day.
Hmm.
So honestly, I couldn't go to any tournaments at that point. Um, and I think I really got more into it when the anonymous smasher thing happened. And so I decided, you know what, this has to stop. I have to take a stand. I have to stand with my community because um, I feel like as anyone who's been involved in like the creative process of making a game, even though there was a very small portion of it, I didn't do all that much in the grand scheme of things. I feel like you need to respect the fans. You need to stand with them, and you need to be on their side when they're going through difficult times. And I just felt it was my responsibility to just be there for them. So that's kind of why I started the little blog thing. That's why I started coming back and like, talking more to the community, really like, trying to represent it in some ways, like trying to talk about it more with people. I actually started playing PM again, more recently, though not at a competitive level. Like I'm trying to get the rust off my my controller, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed PM, but adult life kind of came swinging, and I didn't have time anymore for it for a bit.
Yes, that definitely makes sense. Instead, there was hopefully some time for you to watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, or are you more of a fan of the original series?
Uh, I like both. I will say that the best way to enjoy Fullmetal Alchemist is to watch the 2003 rendition first, and then realize the ending is not that great, but then move on to Brotherhood because the first half of the 2003 anime is the best. The second half of the Brotherhood anime is the best, and if you put them together, you get the better anime.
I've never seen the original series because I had heard they they didn't the entire manga had not come out, so they had to start
Mm,
writing for themselves at a certain point, which I think conceptually like that'd be really cool, like just in general because there th- there's always more time to keep doing remakes and do more of the whatever that you want to for a franchise. If you can make 9 Star Wars movies, you can just remake a few of them. I mean, eventually we'll probably
yeah.
get a New Hope remake. Think about that.
Oh
Yeesh.
God.
But the point is that you can do those kind of things. So I'd like that conceptually, but I liked Brotherhood too much. I just keep going back to
Yeah.
that. Like I'll look at the original series, I'll look at it real hard, and I'll go like, I
Mm.
can't do it. I got to go to Brotherhood. I got to do it, and feel comforted by the first episode.
Yeah, but it's also probably because I grew up with the first rendition, so I have some
Makes
attachment
sense.
to it.
There you go.
And but I think the reason why I like the first season more, I mean the first rendition more, is because I mean for the first half only, is
Right.
because there's a lot more detail. There's a lot more detail for all this for a lot of the scenes, and they're a bit more impactful. But then as soon as it starts reaching the point where the anime veers off the manga's path, then that's where it starts being a bit more on shaky grounds. But I think it's worth experiencing, just so that you could, say that you've seen it all, I guess. But yeah, I like both. But I do prefer Brotherhood Vision.
Just by a smidgen. I mean, I. Who would you say? Okay, so I think one of my favorite bad guys probably still Wrath out of all of the.
Mm.
Gosh, I keep saying Ouroboros in my head, but that's not true. It's the not
Oh, I
the
know what you're talking about.
not the children of father. Like
I know what
um
you're talking about. The homunculus.
homunculus. Holy cow!
Homunculi, yeah.
So, in fairness, I haven't watched Brotherhood in over a year, and I've been very busy this past year. Okay, well, of all the homunculi, yeah, Wrath is my favorite, and my favorite bad guy probably from Brotherhood in general, just because of how, for a character named Wrath, how in control he is. So I just
Mm,
love that just like you're supposed to say, why would he
mm,
be called Wrath if most of the time he's a very measured, very in control
mm,
character, but then there's just little moments, and they draw him so well. Anyway, that's
mm.
probably my favorite bad guy. Who would you say is your favorite?
Honestly, I would probably say Wrath as well, because I think the reason why Wrath works for him, as you were saying, is because sometimes Wrath comes out as spite, and spite can be something that can be planned, calculated. So it's basically like somebody who's like, okay, I want to make you suffer as much as possible, but I will look as calculated as possible. And I feel that's what Wrath kind of represents. He's the kind of character who's like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna hurt you in the worst possible way. I will keep a calm demeanor. I will watch you suffer. And I feel that's a scary thing for villain to be. And that's what makes him basically efficient.
Because most of the time, a bad guy, to help you see that they're a bad guy, they want the character to be here a little bit out of touch
Mhm.
with reality. Because I feel like most of the time
Yeah.
villains are written that way, but Wrath is always like extremely present and clear minded.
Yeah. And that's what makes it scary because they're fully in control of what they're doing. They understand the ramifications of what they're doing, and they're doing it anyways. And that to me is a lot scarier in a way because that's like, you thought about this, and yet you're Nintendoing. It's like, ooh, that's something. But yeah, I think that makes it scarier because it gives a human, almost inhuman. It's like it's both human and inhuman at the same time because it's like
Right.
you had this thought process, you thought this through, you're still going through with it, which is pretty insane.
Right. Nintendo's basically Wrath in in that illustration. Holy cow.
Oh goodness.
That's
Uh,
that is a realization and a half. Okay, but I think that would I if there was ever to be a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood platform fighter, Wrath would
mm,
instantly be my first pick to try and main.
mm,
That'd be day one main for me. And speaking of
mm.
like possible platform fighters, we should probably deviate into this a little bit. This is recent news.
Yeah,
The Warner Brothers leak. I don't
this is interesting.
know. In the
Yeah.
past couple of days, Hungrybox has all of a sudden become like slasher,
Mm,
just people going to
mhm.
him with like resources and leaks and like information. So that's a wild reality that we're all of a sudden living in. Like within days, he's now like almost at Slash's level, who has disappeared for whatever reason. But anyway, the whole of it is that there's supposedly going to be a Warner Brothers platform fighter that involves characters like Batman, like Rick and Morty, then other characters that I can't recall off the top of my head, but you get it. Those kind of IPs. In other words, that there are big companies looking at what Nickelodeon has done with Nickelodeon All Stars Brawl and going, so we could do that too, and people would just buy it. We do that with movies and with TV shows and streaming platforms, but we could do that with games too. Okay. In other words, we're getting some respect around here, Vigilante. I would say so.
Indeed.
For the platform
Uh,
fighters, all the people like us who really enjoy those, whether you like
mhm.
Smash or NASB, or if it's stuff like Rivals of Ether. There we go. I got it.
Yeah,
It's popular.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a untapped market in some way because Nintendo. It kind of always felt like Nintendo had this monopoly on platform fighters for a while, and then like there are a few things that came up like TMNT Smash Up, which is honestly I didn't like the game, but I understand. This was still a move forward. Like someone was trying to make a platform fighter, and I'll at least appreciate it for that. Um,
Shout outs to Super Smash Flash 2 in particular.
yeah,
That's pretty actually well developed, but that was the first one that I played that was outside of Nintendo's
yeah.
Smash World that was made by
Mhm.
Cleod Gaming. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I know, like for example, like Ludosity, Ludosity team, like that makes basically Slap City that made Nickelodeon All Stars. I know there were big PM fans as well, and they said like a lot of their ideas actually came from PM as well. I was like, oh, that's really cool, and I'm actually honored that they took some inspiration from us. I know Dad Fornes is also a big fan of PM as well. I know he liked Melee as well. I think he said he liked Melee, but I don't quote me on that.
No, he
Uh,
basically was saying like he liked Melee, but he could never play it well enough to be good. Something to that effect, where
okay,
he's like,
okay,
I want to make a game that's like helps
yeah,
helps that skill gap
mhm.
a little bit. Because
Yeah,
Melee is
and
a
I feel
technically challenging game.
and I feel like the modding community, and not just Project M, like basically every mod, like there's Melee SD Remix that came, about the same time as PM. There's like Brawl Minus technically is also a different kind of game, but it plays differently. It's fun. Um, and I feel like these mods kind of like inspired people to, be like, hey, I can make my own platform fighter. And with like Dan Fornes, I think he's probably the first one to make a platform fighter that really stuck with the general Smash community in a very positive way. Because I go every time I talk to like melee players, they're like, hey, I play both PM, Rivals of Ether, or I play both PM and Nick All Stars, and like they because the thing is you can't make money off PM. It's not possible, or you can't make that much money off PM in the first place. So if you're not going to be able to make a living off PM, maybe you can play a second game while you're at a PM tournament. And I guess that could be the play for a lot of people's careers. They can, I guess that's probably the way it's going to have to be. But yeah, I mean, I think more competition is seen as good. I don't even care if the games are good. I just care that there's more people trying to do something that they're trying to advance the genre, and they're giving Nintendo competition, which I think is a good thing. There can only be good from competition.
Yeah, especially because, like you said, Nintendo's not really had to worry about other competitors. I remember everybody kind of dunking on the PlayStation attempt. Sony tried to do
That's
a
true. I forgot
platform.
about that.
Say that again?
Yeah. It's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and so well, because it wasn't very good. And so there has been semi attempts, but I think this is actually the beginning of a new era of platform fighters where other big companies are going like, we can pull away Smash people who seem to, or at least the more hardcore competitive side of that community, kind of really pulls and sways around the casuals a lot. I mean, look at Hungrybox. It has like over 400,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
Leffen's about that amount. Um, you have you have other Smash personality. I mean, Mango and so on.
Yeah.
You get it. There are people who have large audiences
Mm.
full of casuals, full of the youngins who have access to their parents' credit card, and big companies look around and they go, okay, so who moves the needle? If we can get that
Mm.
person to play our game, that's going to be a big deal. And I think that it would actually be easier than what might have been the perception a long time ago. But
Mm.
because there's been a breakdown, especially in the past year, of the competitive community's relationship as a whole with Nintendo, our
Yeah.
publisher, then other companies can say there's opportunities to be make it an easier opportunity for us to make a game and say, hey, it's not made by Nintendo, because I mean Nickelodeon is owned by Viacom and people have plenty of bad things to say about that company, but right now Viacom's the hero. They put rollback into a SpongeBob. That's really cool. Woohoo!
I mean, if you think about it, for a lot of Smashers, being an actual Smash athlete, I guess, isn't really a safe job. There's not a lot because Nintendo could just turn up and be like, "You can't play Melee anymore. You can't play PM anymore." I mean, that's at this point, yeah, you can't play PM anymore at most majors.
You
Uh,
can't play Ultimate
but
anymore. They'll say that someday.
yeah, because at some point they'll be like, "Yeah, you know what? Ultimate is gone. There's Smash 6. Smash 6 is out. You gotta play that." And that's what I keep saying to people who are like, well, just play the latest game. It's like, what's gonna happen if for some reason, okay, let's say you're a big fan of Ultimate. You love how Ultimate plays. And then Smash 6 takes away the things you like most about Ultimate.
The buffer
And
system.
then, yeah, exactly. And oh god. I was sorry, sorry. But yeah, I mean, if they take that away, if they take all the things they like about the game away, and they're like, okay, well, you can't play this game anymore for whatever reason, or like, hey, they turn off the online off because that will happen eventually. The online will be taken off of Ultimate one day, and somebody like Fizzy comes up and there's like, hey, you know what? You can play Ultimate online again with your friends, and then Nintendo comes up and they're like, no, you'd be upset. And that's why I always say, like, whichever part of the Smash community you are, you need to support the other parts of that community and even the bigger Nintendo verse as a whole, because the Splatoon community has not had it easy either. And even the ARMS community actually has been very poorly treated by Nintendo. Um, Maybe not as much because I guess they're more of a recent game, but yeah, they have not been treated well at all. And I think we need to help each other out, even if we don't play the games that are affected. And that's why, like, if I hate Brawl as a game, but I don't hate the players. So if, say, Brawl players come up and they're
All
like, "Hey,
three
we
of
want to
them.
hold a tournament," yeah. If they want to come up and be like, "Hey, we want to have a tournament," and you're like, we should hear them out, even if they don't have that many entrants or anything, they deserve to be heard as any other communities. And I think the Warner Brothers game could be interesting. Will it be good? I have no idea, but I like that they're trying it.
Especially if it all turns out to be. I like the excitingness of just saying, "Ah, this is either going to be a thing or it's not going to be a thing. Either Gandalf's going to be in the game." By the way, how did Warner Brothers get the rights to Gandalf being a playable character? What? But anyway, all that to
That's kind
say,
of cool, though.
it is very cool. No, no,
Mm.
you will have no complaints from me. I really
Not a
do
bad
hope. I
anime.
really do hope that something materializes out of it. But for as per usual, it's going to be very hard to
Mhm,
pull somebody like me away from Melee just because nothing else has over the years, which is
mhm.
part of the reason why I started getting more involved because I was like, nothing's pulled me away from Melee. Even in real IRL stuff, hasn't pulled me away from Melee. I still like it whenever I see it on the timeline. So
Mhm.
I'll just dive it right on in. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about that sort of thought process of all the communities rising tide lifts all ships idea. I like that for the most part, but what is going to be the biggest challenge, aside from the fact that we're all grassroots and there's no uniting organization to sort of give direction to everybody to say we're going to kind of lay some general code of conduct type stuff down, hold community members to it. That would be great, but pipe dream. So what we have now is, of course, like between TOs and the content creators that are big, the top players, there's just that eternal like back and forth of this is what we should be doing, this is what we should not be doing. You should not be going to a Nintendo event or commentating a Nintendo event, excuse me, accepting money from Nintendo and doing all that despite all the bad things that they've done to us. That was a headline a few weeks ago. But I think and in the greater context of things, how should the entire community behave around and to Nintendo on social media and at events if Nintendo is like sending representatives to like like give away t-shirts and like show off new games and be like you should totally buy the newest Animal Crossing game or whatever it is. And so I think about those sort of questions and I go, so am I supposed to be like, oh, fuck Nintendo? Or am I supposed to be like, oh, well, conditions, but yeah, we'll let Nintendo in after that. Or if it's like, we just need Nintendo any day now, please, please come back. Please come back, baby. And I don't ever like the idea for, so this is where my opinion comes in. I don't ever like the idea of being mistreated by either another person or an organization and then being like acting as if it's fine if they throw a crumb in my direction. Usually it's
Yeah.
going to need a little bit more than just a half apology or like or not even Nintendo's never apologized for anything they've done, but I don't like the idea of everyone's supposed to be like chill if Nintendo does one small little thing and then we're all supposed to act like all the big stuff that they've done has either water under the bridge kind of a deal. I don't like that conceptually speaking. So I think I just end up falling somewhere in the middle. I'm curious about what you think though.
It's a tough it's a tough situation because I can understand how an influencer might not want to be on Nintendo's bad side in the sense that this is their job, this is how they make their money, this is how they essentially feed their families. So in a
Yes.
way, I can kind of see why somebody would want Nintendo on the good side. And also there's the threat of maybe losing their livelihood because Nintendo is like, well, you can't do this anymore. Uh, it's a difficult thing to say. I'd say my personal opinion, how I would personally see it, is that if Nintendo, if I was a TO and Nintendo approached me, I would be like, okay, well, you have a few options. Either you signed a contract with me, I want this all in writing, and you will you will bow to my demands, and I will not bow to any of your demands because you know I feel we deserve to be treated a lot better than we have. I feel like we need to be very careful around Nintendo because there's this idea of if Nintendo say change presidency, they change whoever is in charge, and whoever was in charge was like, well, I'm running this differently. I don't want to close that door completely. I don't want to be like, oh, Nintendo can never speak to us ever again, but they would have to be under heavy conditions, and we would have to be extremely severe about like what we allow. Right now, I don't think Nintendo has any place in our community. I don't think Nintendo should be allowed anywhere near our community, and I don't think we should even be. I think we should be holding them accountable for what they've done. I don't think it's acceptable what they've done to the Melee, the PM community, and also the Brawl and the Ultimate community. And basically every Smash game has been poorly treated at some point, some more than others, but we've all been through Nintendo's meddling. Um, I guess my personal feeling is get out of here, Nintendo. I don't want to ever see you again. Get out of our tournaments. Uh, but the reality is that they might force themselves into our tournaments, and they might force themselves in a way where it's like maybe the Melee community might be like, well, the only way we can run this tournament is if Nintendo lets us. So we're going to be forced to work with them. Um, but personally, I would rather if we took a stand, but I understand not everyone is going to want to, but I wish everyone did because I think we'd be a lot stronger if the Smash community completely refused to give Nintendo any publicity, refused to give Nintendo influencer publicity, or essentially refuse to work with them whenever they want because we're essentially I mean the entire Smash, especially top players, especially TOs, they're essentially influencers, whether they want it or not. They have sway in the community, and whenever I see people getting excited about like Sora and Smash, I can't help but feel a bit of a tinge because that happens right after they say shut down a PM tournament. I'm like, did we just forget? Did did people just stop caring about PM now? And it happened to Melee too. Like they just revealed Sephiroth and everything was okay.
That's
Like,
all it took.
and I don't think that's okay. I think we should hold ourselves to higher standards. And even with Nintendo Switch Online, that wasn't okay. And people are taking a stand, but I give it 2 months. That's about as much as I give it, and people will start buying it. And we need to stop doing that. I think we need to break that cycle. And I don't know how to do this because I can't tell people what to do.
Nope.
Um,
It's very hard to tell people what to do.
yeah.
With
So I'm conflicted.
Yes, me too. Without there being a unification, standing your ground is so much harder because you look around and you
Yeah.
see people giving in or falling down and you go, "Well, this just got 10 million times harder." And that's
Mhm.
and that's what it'll probably be permanently. My new plan, I came up with this today. I feel like it's a pretty good idea and I shouldn't even reveal it, but I'm just going to anyway because why not? I need to or somebody needs to become the president of the United States and then tell Nintendo of America you're no longer allowed to sell products here, and they'll say why not, and I'll say just cause, and that'll make Nintendo of America upset, obviously, because sales in North America is kind of a big deal, and the
Mhm.
U.S. is kind of a big deal, right? Nintendo of Japan will be like,
Mhm.
wait, what's going on? Why aren't we selling anything in the U.S.? And they'll be like, it's because the government tells us we can't break the law. We're like, I don't know what's
Mhm.
going on, and then I'll leave them in the dark for a few years, and they won't have a clue what's going on. They won't be able to get meetings with me. I'm leaving them in the
Mhm.
dark, right? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
And then when they finally get into a room with me, and they're like, "Come on, what? We have lost so much revenue," and I'll be like, "Yes, you have." Now, in exchange for letting the communities run their tournaments as they see fit and using P plus, Slippy Online, all of the things, you will be able to sell product in this country again. The
So
end.
you take care of the US, I take care of Canada.
Who do we have for Mexico and for the rest of Central America,
Mhm.
South America? Let's get somebody in like Europe and Japan and Asia. Okay, sorry, too far, too far. I will never become president of the United States, and I think that most of the country will be like, why did we vote for this person when this is like the first thing they do in office? What is going on? Because I'm telling nobody except for the cabinet, of course, because all the homies are in the cabinet with me.
You mean like
I
Mango, the Ministry of Finance?
don't know. Okay, so I don't know Mango personally, so I don't know if I would invite him to the cabinet or not. Maybe
I'm
more
just
of like
kidding.
a third party consultant. Mango, what do you think? Melee sick. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
pretty
right.
much.
So that's never going to happen. But I do feel like that's not a bad idea just because you skip the whole court thing. It's like, what are you going to tell the U.S. government? Because They could do a fair amount of things without any sort of legal reprehension, or it would take years to reverse anything like that. Ugh.
Mm.
Mm-mm-mm.
And
Too
like
bad nobody's
speaking of
going to do that.
court, yeah, like speaking of court, what's kind of weird is that people keep bringing up this defense that Nintendo has to go after like copyright infringement or else they're gonna lose their IP. And I'm
Oh,
like,
that's not the
well,
dumbest thing ever.
Valve and Sega. And the funny thing is that actually, on the blog that I've started writing because basically I've been keeping track
Link in the description, by the way.
of all what Nintendo's been doing recently. Because I figured the only thing I can do is chronicle what they're doing, so that if people want to be like, "Hey, why you hate Nintendo?" It's like, well, here, just read that. Um, and the thing is, you cannot lose your IP for not defending it. What people seem to be confounding it with is because of a thing that's called genericide. Essentially, what's going on is that if people keep saying, "Oh, every paper tissue is a Kleenex," then maybe the Kleenex brand might lose the right to just be like, "Oh, you can't call it a Kleenex," essentially.
Trademarks.
Yeah, essentially. But when it comes to copyright itself, they don't actually have to. They don't actually have to defend it. They will lose the right to go after an infringement if the infringement, say, gets released and then it takes they wait 3 years before going after the infringement. So, for example, like Melee had, I don't know, Melee had it for, let's say they had it their what am I talking about, Melee? PM, let's say they had their 4.0 release. Right, okay, as soon as it gets released, they have 3 years to do something about it. If they don't, they lose the right to go after that specific infringement. But that doesn't mean they lose the right to go after other infringements. It's just that specific one because then in court they'll say, well, you didn't go after them for 3 years, so they have a reasonable, at least in the U.S., they have a reasonable, modus operandi to be like, hey, you can't go after, you were okay with this, so we'll let it happen, we'll let it go. So Nintendo doesn't have to do anything. Nintendo could basically just stand by and be like, well, you know what? This Brawl mod is fine, but this Animal Crossing mod with like anti-Semitic messages is not okay. And they could be like, well, you know what? We'll take down this one because this is really hurting our brand, but this one isn't because it's just a love letter. So they can choose to not go after things. They just choose not to,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of confounds me in a way. And what's kind of interesting is that um, since IP, because the risk of genericide is almost nothing. Because if you make a Metroid mod, people are not going to call every game's a Metroid. That's not what's going to happen. Maybe Metroidvania might become like a generic thing, but not people are not going to go look at Mario and be like, "Oh, you're playing the next Metroid game." That's not how it goes. But if they really want to protect themselves, what they could do is do what Valve does. Valve literally has a public licensing thing that they basically have on their website. And it's like, okay, well, you can use our intellectual property to do this, and this. All this is okay. This is not okay. And go ahead. So Nintendo could be like, well, uh, Project M, don't put Super Smash Brothers in your title, and maybe put a thing that says, well, this is not an official piece of work. Like they could do that, for example, and that would
I
protect
mean,
their
wouldn't they
IP.
already do that even now?
Yeah, and I mean, they could allow it to exist with certain conditions, and that is the kind of middle of the road thing they could do. And I think I would have been. I think the team would have been okay with playing ball with that. Because I mean, honestly, at this point, we were always talking about Nintendo in a positive way. Because I did a lot of interviews. For example, I remember in Nintendo Force, I was like, "Yeah, we love Nintendo," because we didn't want to piss them off, obviously. And
But
at
also
the
because it's
time, we did
true, we
have
grew up on these characters in
yeah.
games.
I mean,
Like,
I have a three
why do you
hundred
think
dollar pack of Radiance watch.
who's who does this because they want to torture themselves for 35 extra hours a week? You're doing it
Yeah.
because you love it.
Hmm.
They
I
kind of
mean,
missed out on the passion of the gamers.
yeah, we just love those games. That's why we want to play them.
And make them better.
Uh, yeah, I mean, and with Melee, it's a game that survived the test of time because it's just a damn good game. and it's okay. I mean, honestly, Nintendo, I don't even know why they're not re-releasing Melee on HD consoles. I don't get it.
Because of the latency thing. You press the button.
They're probably gonna patch out wave dashing or something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. They don't have so the thing is, they can legally do it, but they don't have to, and that's what I want to dispel.
Yes.
And if you want to know who where I got this from, it's from an Ingenious Clown video where he interviewed Leonard French, who's a copyright lawyer. So if you look at if you look at that video, it's actually very interesting. He goes really into detail with like, hey, you know what, Nintendo can do this. They don't have to. Here's why. Here's what they do. And yeah, they there's a lot of ways to keep their IP safe while allowing fans to do derivative work.
This is more of a collaborative opportunity, if you will. And all you have to do is look at how other game developers respond to fan projects. Most of them are like, oh, that's, yeah, good for you. That's really cool. Like, we're not going to give you money and we're not going to do whatever, whatever, but we're not going to heartlessly shut you down and force you to abandon something that you spent an obvious, like, large amount of time on. And so not everybody gets hired by Sega to make another Sonic game. I mean, because that did happen. That doesn't happen every time, but
Mhm.
almost any other game developer would kill for this
Yeah,
kind of stuff that Smash does in particular. Somebody like Fizzy, who thankfully was able to work on rollback netcode full time and being supported to do that, and then release that 5 or so months, 3 or 4 months into quarantine, and all of a sudden now everybody can truly play from home for Melee specifically. It is too bad about P Plus not getting rollback netcode, at least not without a couple of miracles or several miracles. But anyway, all that to say, there all these things that the community has done for each of their games respectively or just across all fronts is mostly fueled by the fact that we just love the games so much,
pretty
and not
much.
really from a wow, how do I get rich quick kind of a scheme, or
We
somehow
lost
trying to
so much money on PM.
or trying to claim that now I own Mario. I will be selling Mario hats now or whatever.
Yeah, it's less I own Mario and more I really love Mario. Like, I just want more Mario in my life, basically. And yeah, and what's ironic is that for PM, the reason why Knuckles got in the game, well, I mean, we did start working on him, but like, we had doubts because we're like, okay, well, this is from another publisher. Can we take that risk? And so at one point we posted the little thing that to the Sonic the Hedgehog Twitter, and we're like, "Hey, Project M and Knuckles, what about it?" And he's like, "You know what I have to do." I was like, "Oh, so you're telling us we can't do it?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, okay. And
Okay.
like the Sega Twitter was awesome. Like the Sonic the Hedgehog Twitter is gold. And what's really cool is like when PM shut down, he literally put like a picture of Roy Mustang crying at like at a funeral, going like
It is
you're
raining.
amazing. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, man, I have so much respect for Sega for what they did. I mean, uh, they did some dumb things as well, but I mean, the thing
Everybody
is, at
makes
least,
mistakes.
but that is something I must give Sega a lot of credit for, and I very much respect them for that. So I mean, Knuckles happened because Sega allowed it to, and I cannot begin to thank them for their openness.
And so you play P Plus nowadays, knocking off the rust. What is the rest of the year looking like for you, Vigilante?
The rest of the year, pandemic, so essentially I'll be staying at home most of the time. Um, right now I'm just playing P plus, but also I've tried a bunch of mods like Project M EX Remix, which was actually kind of interesting because I tried it like a few years ago and I was like, oh, oh no, that's not quite polished, but it's actually improving quite a bit and it's actually starting to look like something more legit. So I was actually very surprised with the amount of work they put in there. It looks pretty good. So yeah, I think polishing my Roy a bit, um, make sure I get you know I you know I'm not sure I'll get to many tournaments right now because of the pandemic. I'm kind of skittish on that. Um, But maybe I'd like to go to a tournament once in a while without necessarily like, going every time. I'd like to see a bit more of the community, see if maybe there's a still a scene in my area that could be kind of nice. But right now, I'm just gonna be a cheerleader, just help them out any way I can. Uh, keep trying to keep Nintendo accountable. I'll stop whenever they stop, basically. And I just want to be a bro to my community, and they, I really hope they can succeed. And all I can really do is just cheer them on. That's all I can do right now.
I love the way that you approach trying to be a help to the P Plus community in particular, but also in terms of holding Nintendo accountable. Because whether or not there's ever going to be a chance at a healthy relationship between the community and Nintendo, the accountability must still be something that's part of all of that. It
Yeah.
cannot be. It is not a forgive and forget sort of thing.
Mhm.
It is going to require a reckoning of saying, hey, you need to acknowledge the things that you've done in the past to actively harm and try to suppress like what we as a community love to do. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to make sure that the people can find you. Where can they go if they want more of Vigilante Blade
I mean, I don't have much to share. I have my Twitter, which is essentially Vigilante Blade.
underscore
Uh,
Blade?
yeah, pretty much underscore Blade. Um, I guess that's the only way you could pretty much follow me. I'm a pretty private person, generally speaking. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'll answer whatever questions people have. Sometimes I'll put a little blurb about how many things about PM development, just because I think it's interesting. Because I'm actually surprised how little things have been shared with like the public, probably because it just never came up. And I have this little blog that I barely ever update, but I do update it for Nintendo stuff as much as I can. It's just one post that's so long I can't even keep track of. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
but otherwise, yeah, I don't have anything to share except if you want to follow me and like hang out, talk to me, I'm pretty approachable, I think. So yeah, and just and keep watching, keep sorry, keep supporting BSM, your podcast, and keep supporting Cypher. Honestly, he's a great voice for the community. And yeah, I just appreciate you having me on, and keep supporting your local communities. Keep supporting PM. Keep supporting Melee. Every Smash tournament. And I don't like you, Nintendo. I'll just say it like that. I'll be polite right now.
Grassroots. We out
Yeah,
here. Yes.
I will accept an apology if it's very much sincere. But otherwise, please stay away from my tournaments and stay away from my friends. Stay away from my community.
The people who are interested in the possibility of checking me out, I don't usually plug myself, but I forgot to mention I'm doing the Patreon thing mostly because I want to do this and do that thing where I make money sometimes. But I've done the podcast for free and I will continue to do it for free in the sense you will get most of what I make. I don't want to put half of my interviews behind paywalls or anything. So you might want to ask the guest like Vigilante a question. So become a patron and you can do that. You might want to see the entire uncut interview, unedited interview. You can become a patron for that. Or if you want to have your name involved in everything, the overlay, the Twitter bio, I'll mention you every single time kind of a thing, you can subscribe to do that. So patreon.com/bsmpod. And yes, the socials are in the overlay at bsmpod on Twitter. And if you ever want to see me and the guests talking, me and Vigilante, if you're not already on YouTube, you just look up Bottom of Smash Mountain on YouTube and you'll find it. Don't worry about it. But otherwise, Vigilante, thank you so much for the time. And I look forward to continuing to interact with you out there on the big wide internet. Thank you for joining me on Bottom of Smash Mountain.
Thank you for having me on, by the way.